Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And boy, oh boy, aren't we lucky as basketball fans, Logan, because we have seen two pretty awesome game ones to start the conference finals. Today, of course, we are going to be talking about what we just saw in Mavs Wolves. Logan, this was a very interesting game. The Timberwolves led not by much, but for a significant majority of it. But Luka Doncic comes in with 15 points in the fourth to pull out a huge game one road win for Dallas. What did you take away from his performance?
The fact that I can buy an argument that this Luka Doncic is the best player in the world. We recently went on Jason's show, Carson, and we talked about, the five guys that we'd want moving forward in the playoffs. We talked about it last round, and I ranked Luka pretty convincingly fourth on that list. I had Ant above him. I had SGA above him. He just took over in this one. I mean, he just took over. That's what the best player in the world is supposed to do, man. He gives you 33, 6, and 8 overall in this game on 12 of 26 from the field, 3 of 10 from deep. But you mentioned the 15 fourth quarter points, dude. That's what the best players in the world do, dude. They slam the door. They don't leave you any life. They choke the opponent out, man. They end the mess. And that's what they did in this one, dude. Luka did. And I mean, he's abusing drop and killing Jaden McDaniels in isolation, dude. He hits a huge pull-up, or he hits a huge step-back three off the Ant pull-up three. That was crazy, too, because he doesn't want to shoot it off the catch. He takes the reset dribble and then steps back on him. He's got that nasty one early in the fourth quarter where he's just in isolation versus NA Dub and triple threat, gives him a little jab, creates enough space, just rises and fire over him. And then we see some flashes of Luka highlights on the defensive end, too. He breaks off that Conley to Cat lob attempt. He has a crucial defensive rebound during the down the stretch in this one, man. And you can't overstate it. This is versus one of the best perimeter defenders in all of basketball. Literally earlier today, Jaden McDaniels got All-NBA second, or All-Defense second team, excuse me. And I think he's the best perimeter defender in basketball. No answer, man. Like, just tearing up drop coverage, man, consistently throughout this game, utilizing his strength to create advantages against the insane length of Jaden McDaniels, man, his change of pace. Like, this is a game that I've been waiting on, man. Like, the Mavericks needed something like this. They needed somebody to step up, man. Nobody's shooting well. Kyrie's disappearing a little bit in the second half, and Luka just completely takes over. Like, that's my big takeaway, man, is this version of Luka looks like the best player left in the field, and I could buy him. I would buy an argument as this guy is the best player in the world. Like, it is so hard to guard him in any action, man. And again, in isolation versus one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball, but also just how hard it is against that drop, man. Like, it's not just because Luka's that dominant, it's because it's a hard action to figure out, right? If Gobert steps up on him, he is conceding that alley-oop over the top that Luka can hit every single time. But if he keeps dropping, you got to trust Jaden McDaniels to do his thing, and he didn't. Luka convincingly dominated that matchup against, again, one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball and carried Dallas across the finish line, man, in the fourth quarter. He was the best player on the floor tonight.
I have felt pretty clearly, and I think you and I may differ on this because of how high you've become on Ant, but that there's no question Luka is the best player remaining in the postseason, but he hasn't played like it. And the knee threw into question if he would be able to reach that level, because for the most part, through the first two rounds, like, he was disappointing and his jumper was ice cold. He wasn't the Luka that we are used to, especially in the playoffs where he's historically been so dominant. And now you're looking at 3 straight games where he has absolutely been at that level. And he was the best player on the floor by a mile tonight. And by the way, the second best player on the floor was his teammate, which is going to be quite difficult for Minnesota to overcome if that remains the case. But this is just massive, not only for tonight, but for what it means going forward for Dallas, that Luka is in a rhythm like this as a jump shooter now. I also thought that he was moving quite well. And of course, against drop, like, he is going to be able to get into the lane some more than when he's dealing with these blitzes and consistently seeing 2 defenders on the ball as he was against OKC. But boy, did he just look comfortable and perfectly in control. And that's the beauty of Luka Doncic, right? You are supposed to, as a defense, be constantly compromised, especially when you're dealing with him out of pick and roll, because there isn't a pass that he can't make, a skip pass, a lob, and there really isn't a shot that he can't make. And that was all on display in this one. Like, the fourth quarter shot making is just sensational, but all game long, I loved the looks that he was getting. He is the single best player alive at manipulating screens and at manipulating his defender when he's working out of pick and roll. His ability to just trap Jaden McDaniels on his back, work to those short range floaters, even when he didn't really convincingly have him trapped on his back, then get to the step back for mid range, where he's really been quite good in these playoffs. His three ball left him for extended stretches, but the mid range has been pretty darn money. He's not going to get all the way to the rim against Rudy, but he didn't need to. He was getting really good shots. And as you mentioned, he was demanding that defensive attention from Rudy, and then he was feeding the rollers. I just thought he got what he wanted out of pick and roll. He cooked Anthony Edwards in isolation a couple times, bullied him, and just went through him on one drive and then spun off him the next possession. They tried to switch that matchup because Ant was getting cooked by Kyrie, and then they had to switch it right back, which is another problem that we'll have to talk about. But it was phenomenal. He was the guy who asserted himself physically in this game, which was a big difference from last series, where it felt like Lou Dort really established the physicality in that matchup, and it frustrated Luka at times. Jaden McDaniels is just much slighter, and so although his screen navigation is great and his length is fantastic, like, he can't physically throw Luka off in nearly the same way. And again, Ant just wasn't up to the task in that matchup. So he was perfectly in control. And I do think we're going to need to see some Minnesota adjustments. We can talk about that later, but I think we're going to need to see more blitzing, more playing up at the level, just forcing the ball out of his hands more, because last series, OKC got burnt by conceding so many great looks to shooters in the corners willingly to try to take away what Luka and Kyrie could do as scorers and just what Dallas's entire offense could do in the paint. But Dallas got fantastic shot quality in the paint all night. And ultimately, like, the deciding factor in this game is just how much better Luka is than Ant, because Kyrie was massive in the first half, but Minnesota got some real impressive performances from their supporting cast. Their stars didn't play up to the level necessary. And Ant shouldn't have to outplay Luka to win this series. I, coming into this, picked Minnesota, not thinking that Ant would outplay Luka, just saying that he can't get soundly outplayed. He can't get dogged by Luka. There can't be a level between the two of them. And in this one, there was. So again, it doesn't really matter how well Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels play if Dallas has clearly the two best players on the floor. That is extremely difficult to recover from, and that was very much the case in this game.
That was the case, man. And I do want to give a big shout out to Kyrie Irving for what he did in the first half. And I think you hit on something big. Like, I also picked the Timberwolves to win this series, but in any given game, Dallas can have convincingly the two best offensive players on the court. And it's a special recipe and a unique luxury that Dallas has over, I mean, almost the entirety of the NBA, man. Like, that's the beauty. If Kyrie is cooking in the first half, let him cook. Luka, you ain't got to touch a rock. We'll let Kyrie do his thing. And then guess what? Luka's fresh for the second half. We'll let him carry us over the finish line. Like, I don't know if there's any other team that has that kind of offensive luxury, that at any given point, it's like, all right, we're going to let him go to work. And Kyrie and Luka consistently torched McDaniels, Edwards. I was really surprised at how much they dominated them. Like, Kyrie's speed, he was utilizing it so well. There's a pick and roll with PJ in this game. Cat tries to hedge over it. He blows by Jaden McDaniels and Karl-Anthony Towns, dude. There's multiple plays in the first half where he is just coast to coast off of an inbounds pass. Like, and not just coast to coast. There's that one where Luka throws the sick pass. There's another one where Jaden McDaniels tries to press him and Kyrie just blows completely by him to the hoop. Like, his speed was so crucial in the first half and created them so many buckets. And like, they score 5 points at the end of the first half. That's a big swing where, you know, they close the gap. And there's some of this where I think there's bad defense for Minnesota, but for the majority of this game, like, and McDaniels are really trying to apply ball pressure, and Luka and Kyrie just have every answer for them. There's another one, man, where Luka just spins completely off of Anthony Edwards. There's a couple possessions where I was really disappointed in them. Jaden McDaniels tries to cheat on Derrick Jones Jr. Kyrie gets a really easy back cut off of that. There's another one where Anthony Edwards is completely asleep on the corner with Kyrie Irving. He attacks out of the corner. It gets an easy layup for Daniel Gafford. Those will happen, but like, even when those guys were engaged, Kyrie and Luka cooked them, completely cooked them, man. Like, we just need more resistance. And I do think there are some adjustments they can make, Carson, as you mentioned. Like, one, I know that Gobert is getting cooked and dropped. I think they have to play Gobert as much as possible. I thought they allowed way
Hold
too
on,
many.
hold on. He's not getting cooked. What's he supposed to be doing better?
I mean, not a whole lot, but I mean, they're abusing the drop. I
Yeah.
still think they have to play him as much as possible because when he was off the floor, they were just conceding way too many attempts at the rim, way too many layups.
And also, well, Logan, when they had him blitz, when they had him play up at the level, he was really good. So it's not
Mhm.
a Gobert issue. Like we've seen, he can guard in space. He can play all these different coverages. They just stuck with the drop for too long in a game when Luka,
Exactly.
especially, was just so comfortable against it.
Well, and what I also didn't understand about that was when, like, I think they need to send more doubles to Luka, especially when PJ Washington is the guy, or Derrick Jones Jr. for that matter, if they're on the wing or at the top of the key when Luka is driving. I don't want to concede any of those corner threes to those guys because they can spray them. But when they're on the wing or the top of the key, I am sending that help defender off from the side. And I thought that was just something that Minnesota should have done more. Dallas is struggling to hit three-pointers all game. Luka is killing you in pick and roll in isolation. Like, at a point, I'm going, hey, guys, we got to do
Yeah.
something different, like blitz him. And so I think that's an adjustment that Minnesota can make, sending more blitzes, more timely ones too, just smart doubles, like, and just mixing the coverage up. Luka was just killing them. And then if that doesn't work, I don't know, man. Played Nikhil Alexander-Walker more for some length, but even Luka was killing him one-on-one. Like, that's got to change, man. Defensive scheme, defensive strategy, where you're putting guys, you just borderline. Luka and Kyrie cannot abuse what I think is still the best defense in the NBA, man. They got obliterated tonight. That's got to change in game two.
Absolutely. And I think that we will see better efforts from Minnesota going forward. I think that they need to be more physical in this matchup. Again, Luka was very much the aggressor, and he is a bigger, stronger player than a Jaden McDaniels, but still Minnesota can improve there. And we expected them to play much more straight up, much more traditional coverages because they do just have better personnel and they have the best formula in league to play drop. Like you have the best drop defender in terms of what he does as a deterrent with Rudy Gobert. And then you have great screen navigators like Alexander Walker and Jaden McDaniels who can apply back pressure. So it's not surprising that that was their game plan. But there comes a point where it's like, okay, you're just getting carved up and you need to make an adjustment here. And you need to at least just mix things up for the strategic advantage of giving a different look. And what did we see, especially early in that OKC series? At times, Lively and Gafford overwhelmed when they were met by the low man, just with the question of, okay, well, I'm not really comfortable finishing here. Or, oh, I wasn't expecting to see a body right now and I'm getting tripped up with my footwork. That happened again in this game. It is obviously not some automatic fix. Like Luka pick and roll, Kyrie pick and roll is deadly no matter what. But although OKC got killed leaving those shooters, and Minnesota does have such great personnel, you wouldn't think that they would have to like load up so aggressively on the stars. There may come a point where it's just like, okay, prove that somebody else can beat us. And again, Rudy plays up at the level and Luka slips on a drive. Like, I think you need to play a higher drop at the very least where you're trusting your low man to tag. And that was another thing. Early in this game, they blitzed a couple times and the low man just wasn't there. So they got easy feeds to the bigs. But we need to see a better defensive effort from Minnesota. At the same time, like it's Kyrie and Luka, man. And this is what we've been waiting for, right? The collective explosion that we haven't quite seen in these playoffs. If it's been because of Luka's jumper being off, his knee, if it's been because of the defensive coverages, Kyrie just saying, I'm going to sit back and relax in first half. He came out in this game aggressive. He came out hunting his shot. And we talked about this in our preview. We talked about this with Hoop Venue. Like this series was always going to be about Kyrie being more aggressive as a scorer, coverage being a huge part of that. And he was just a problem from the jump. You mentioned his quickness. That was specifically the biggest thing. He's also just so great off ball. He is just such a constant burden to guard. It requires a level of focus from Ant that is really, really challenging. And especially considering what he has to exert offensively, Ant was exhausted by the end of this game, like weirdly exhausted. And we'll talk about that more. I don't know if he is sick. I understand that he just played in a game 7. I understand that he played 41 minutes. I understand that it is a tough ass defensive assignment. You are 22 years old, my man. You are one of the best athletes in the league. Like, If he isn't sick, then I don't understand how conditioning could be that much of a factor where he just becomes uninvolved. But Kyrie, you got to give props because he was certainly a factor at the very least in wearing Ant down like that. And again, it's just the level of attention, right? Kyrie rejects the screen and the quickness is just too much. Ant's out of position. He relocates off of a blitz and Ant loses him. Like little stuff like that. We saw in the regular season matchup, it's screen navigation for Ant. It's not a question of the tools. It's not a question of can he hold up in isolation. It is going to be about defending holistically. And I thought that he struggled in that respect, especially in the first half against Kyrie. And you mentioned another key point, Logan, which is what Kyrie did in transition. Just by my count, he had 11 transition points just in the first half and specifically destroyed their ball pressure. Multiple occasions, they are setting him a screen in the backcourt, and he is so quick and he is so ridiculously good as a finisher that he is getting into the lane, and it doesn't have to be an easy layup. He's Kyrie. He's one of the best finishing guards that we've ever seen. So he is turning what has been an extremely disruptive weapon, what has slowed down offenses, destroyed offenses, forced them into bad turnovers, prevented them from getting into their actions early in the shot clock. He's taken that and he said, all right, I'm actually going to make that a weakness of yours. I'm going to get easy buckets against it. Like Minnesota just hasn't faced that yet. Nobody on Phoenix had that sort of quickness. Jamal Murray certainly did not have that sort of quickness. So I thought that that was extremely impressive from Kyrie. And Stan Van Gundy said it at the top of this broadcast, but this really is probably the best offensive backcourt ever. Like, I think there's some great competition there. Of course, the OG is Weston Goodrich. The toughest to me is Stephen Clay, just because of the collective gravity there and like what that does, not just in terms of how great they are in a vacuum, but how it greases the wheels for an entire offense, like one of the great modern offenses that we've seen. Tough to deny those two. But at the same time, it's like the level of on-ball creation and shot making that you get, the gap between a Kyrie and Clay situation, of course, matters in these conversations, but who's the better, more valuable basketball player in a vacuum? It's Kyrie. Alongside Steph, maybe those things change, but they're at the very least firmly in the conversation, and they showed all of that tonight. They were just fantastic.
Are they the best duo in basketball to you? Do you think that's a throne that Jokic and Murray have lost or could lose potentially?
Listen, Jamal Murray didn't play at the level of a star in this postseason run. So I still believe the synergy of their two-man game, just how complementary it is, like that is not something that I can see anybody really challenging, but is there just a talent quotient that could overwhelm that? Yeah, like when Kyrie and Luka are both playing like top 15 dudes and Jamal Murray was one of the least efficient volume scorers we've seen in the playoffs in a while, well, that changes things. So they are certainly in the conversation.
Yeah, I think the mantle's up for grabs. And you hit on the next big thing, man, is the fact that, the Timberwolves just need more from Anthony Edwards, man. And this was not a great scoring night, specifically in the fourth quarter. And you mentioned the exhaustion. I don't know if he was sick. I don't know if he was tore up last night, trying to recover. I don't know what the circumstances were. I don't know if he's injured. But he looked tired, not only on offense, too, but in traditional plays that Ant's making, or at least making an effort defensively, like when he gets blown by right on ball. Like I'm expecting Ant to trail and try to make a play on the ball on the back end defensively. And he's not. Like when a guy blew by him, it was straight to the hoop and Ant's just kind of standing there. But specifically the issue is in the fourth quarter. And what I didn't understand with Ant was how much he was settling in single coverage against these guys, right? And is so explosive on ball. Nobody can stay in front of him. And sometimes he's not even making an effort to get downhill, man. Like he's just getting into those threes. I did think this was a good playmaking night overall from him and decision-making night, especially in the first half. I was so impressed with some of the plays that he made. There's a play in the first half. They clear out the right side. He drives, gets triple teamed into an easy Jaden McDaniels corner three. There's another play where Luka gets caught ball watching on an Ant pump fake. Easy kick out to Jaden McDaniels relocating. You dealt with doubles well. There were some plays where he made some weak side kicks that he normally doesn't make. Like Anthony Edwards normally doesn't like to make that pass. He made a couple weak side kicks. I don't think they capitalized. I think Cat missed a corner three off the weak side kick. I think Naz Reid misses a corner three off of that, but he doesn't normally make those plays. There are a few errant passes. One of those weak side kicks he throws out of bounds. He throws a ball away to Mike Conley. Like, it wasn't a perfect playmaking game, but for the most part, I liked his decision-making and his playmaking. But again, I have to emphasize, Anthony Edwards is the number one guy on this team, and he was passive in the fourth quarter. And the expectation is that you are going to rise to the show. You're going to play like the best player on the court, and he didn't, man. I didn't like how much he settled. I didn't like how passive he was in the fourth quarter. I think they mentioned it on the broadcast when I'm sitting there going, Ant, like, we need you to take over, to go take a shot. And he didn't, man. We clearly need more from Anthony Edwards in the fourth quarter, just taking over and scoring and trying to exert his his pressure on the game. I didn't think this was a horrible overall game, but you definitely need more from him in the fourth quarter. And if it's a conditioning thing, buckle up, Ant. Like, it's going to be a long series, my friend, dude. Kyrie is not going to let up, and you are going to have your hands full with that in defensive coverage. Like, I don't know if we got to get on the treadmill, man. I don't know.
They had to move him off the matchup, dude.
Yeah. It's going to be a long series, man. If it's a conditioning issue, like, he can't be this tired, man. I need more from him defensively. I need more from him offensively, but I especially need more from him in the fourth quarter, just exerting his pressure and taking over the game, man. I was disappointed with that aspect, man, and I thought he was third best player on the court tonight, right behind Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah, it was a super disappointing Ant game. And a lot of it is just about the passivity in the second half. In the first half, I thought he mostly played well. I thought, as you mentioned, he made some really nice skip passes and his pull-up jumper was falling. He struggled defensively, but he was really good on the glass. Like, he made a very positive impact on the game in that first half. But in the second half and down the stretch, particularly, just a non-factor. And the Timberwolves' clutch offense is either running through Conley or it's just devolving into like Cat contested jumpers. And Cat did not play a good game. However, I do want to give him props, at least for like making some shots in the clutch, running pick and roll and getting Rudy a look. As we all know, Cat Gobert pick and roll is unguardable. It generates like 1.7 points per possession in the playoffs. They're not allowed to run it more than twice a game because Adam Silver has that as an official league policy. If they did, they would never be stopped. But he hits a bailout deep three when Ant just like does nothing with the ball in his hands and passes out of it. He hits that bailout fadeaway, but ultimately you just need Ant way more involved down the stretch because Cat shot quality isn't super high. And I do want to give specific props to Luka for blowing up that lob to Rudy because I thought that was an excellent defensive play that he made. But Ant was clearly completely uncomfortable driving down the stretch of this game. And I want to give props to Dallas's defense for really making it difficult for Minnesota to score in the paint throughout this game. Not just Ant, everybody. Their rim protection was excellent. Ant only attempts 2 shots in the paint, Logan, and both of them were blocked in very short succession. So he was finding success driving and kicking out, but even as the great rim finisher that he is in traffic, like, he doesn't finish around the rim once in this game, and he only draws 2 free throws. So he wasn't getting any of that like easy offense that is normally somewhat embedded into his game around the rim. And it's like he's seeing help, right? But he's not consistently seeing doubles down the stretch of this game, and he's passing out no matter what. It was either Rudy sets him a great screen and he steps into an open pull-up three, or he's not involved in the action, or he's passing out without even attempting a drive. And he certainly didn't seem right. We'll see what the update is, but this loss is on him. This loss is on him, and it's also on Cat. But it's mostly on him because he is the dude who has played at this superstar level consistently, and he was just absent when it mattered most. And when you get 50 points from Jaden and Nas and Kyle and the other team make 6 threes, and you're at home and you're leading for most of this game, you have to win that basketball game. And even more so, you especially cannot let things fall apart for your team without even really getting involved. I don't think Ant is wired that way. That's part of why I think there's something going on. Maybe it is just extreme fatigue, but that was a really inexcusable performance from him down the stretch.
It was, man. And like you said, the Mavs make 6 threes in this game. The Mavericks have only had 2 other games this season in which they've made 6 or less threes. That's an anomaly. Like, you have to capitalize on that. And I want to give Cat a little more props just for it's a bad shooting night. It's a really bad shooting night. He needs to be better too. I like the way he play makes. You mentioned a couple of pick and rolls with with Gobert, But I liked how he attacked off of closeouts too, man. When he got an
For sure.
opportunity down there, he was getting downhill. He set up some easy buckets for his teammates, either, with a hockey assist or, with an easy dunk inside. And I want to give props to Jaden McDaniels and those guys too, man. The one thing that I loved most about McDaniels in this game, his relocation throughout the offense. And I think Dallas should take Luka off of him. I think Luka is so, and I don't know, it's tough, right? Because Dallas's personnel, right? Like you got to stick Luka on somebody. Luka just consistently will fall asleep there. And I thought Jaden McDaniels did a phenomenal job consistently of relocating for threes, dude. There's the one, Conley's got a pick and roll with Gobert. He sinks right up to the wing. Easy three, dude. There's the Ant one that I mentioned earlier where J-Mac just relocates Luka's ball watching. He's waiting for the shot to go up. And he was just ready. And he also had some just other huge impact moments, man. He misses a floater, gets his own offensive rebound into a dunk. He wins that jump ball versus Luka and gets an easy layup off of that, man. He drives and sets an easy dunk where Gobert gets fouled off of a dunk, man. Like, J-Mac played a really good game, man, and it ultimately goes to waste here. It's got to be frustrating for those guys. Also, can we talk, Carson, what the hell was up with that putback dunk that Cat had that they called back? Like, I don't know. I
think that was interference. I think it was. It looked like that ball was still above the rim. It was really close.
I just hated a couple of these late foul calls against Minnesota, and I'm not saying that this single-handedly swung the game. For the most part, I don't really think referees have a bearing on the outcome of basketball games, but I didn't like two of the foul calls late. I didn't like the Conley, Luke's ball foul on THJ. Like, that to me was soft. I also didn't like, I think there was another one where NA-Dub contests a shot and they call a foul, but the one that got me was, that's just a momentum shifter, man. And Karl-Anthony Towns had two huge putback dunks in this one, man. He had one early.
He's crashing the glass, that man.
If there's nobody in the paint, Cat is coming in to wreak havoc, and I hated that call, man. Like, that's a momentum play, and it's so close that I just don't get how you can call it in that situation.
Ty goes to the runner. Ty goes to the hype play.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. Like, you're sucking some energy out of the build and out of the broadcast.
It was a stick play.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. As a fan, like, and I am ultimately, like, I just hate when you call that. Like, that's an awesome basketball play in a crucial, that's a moment, right? And the ref said, we're just going to take it back real quick. I didn't like that call. Again, I don't really think it had that big of an effect on the outcome of this game, but I was not a big fan of either of those late calls.
The Conley one, very, very, very ticky-tack. It's tough when Tim Hardaway Jr. sells it like that. And then, honestly, the ref explanation is hilarious. Subtle yet effective. It's like, fair enough, man. Like, yeah, it moved him out of position, but in playoff basketball in the closing minutes of a game, I tend to let that slide. Again, the Cat thing, I do think that they made the right call. And it's a bummer. Like, it was a really cool play. Cat has been flying in for putbacks. By the way, got to start boxing out because you can't just continually allow that to happen. But I didn't have a problem with that call specifically. Yeah, you give shout outs to a lot of these Minnesota guys. I mean, Jaden McDaniels, what an impressive young man. Like, he has just been playing at such a high level offensively over these last 3 games, and they've needed it. It's the pure shooting. It is the closeout attacking. It is what he's done as an offensive rebounder. Really, really valuable stuff. Naz Reid comes in and swings this game. Like, those two were arguably Minnesota's 2 best players in this game. I thought that they were both really, really good. He just has those quick release threes, man, off the ant kickouts. There's nobody I'd rather have that ball going to than Naz because of the high release point and the speed of the release and his comfort from everywhere beyond the arc. And he was working on the glass and he was working defensively. He has that massive chase down block after Luka made an incredible pass to Josh Green. And then Kyle Anderson, bro, they just weren't guarding him. But guess what? You got to guard him. You got to guard Kyle Anderson at the very least. He did what Josh Giddey could not, Logan, and he actually made a team pay for not guarding him. Getting to the mid-range, getting to those push shots, knocking down a wide-open corner 3, and then what happens? Now you have to respect Kyle Anderson. And so now you use him as a screener. They actually step up to challenge that push shot. He finds Cat in the corner. Makes a kick-out pass as a short roller. Run your offense through Kyle Anderson. That's my takeaway. He balled out, but that does make it painful for Minnesota that you lose this game. And that's not to say that everybody was great. Nickeil Alexander-Walker just has to find his shot. He's been off. Mike Conley, I thought, created some solid shots with his playmaking, but he also got a lot of good looks in terms of pull-up threes. Like playing drop against him, right? He's such a good pull-up shooter, such a good three-point shooter that those are comfortable looks, and they just weren't falling. But I do put this mostly on Ant and Cat because they just got so convincingly outplayed by Luka and Kyrie. And it's not like Dallas got a bunch of contributions from their supporting cast. They had dudes who did specific things very well. Their rim protection changed this game. Like that is just such a different dynamic from Minnesota facing Denver. And it's been a major tenet of Dallas's success throughout this postseason. We talked about the opponent field goal percentage at the rim over their last two series. They've been the best in basketball in these playoffs. And it makes a profound difference, again, on Ant's ability to finish around the rim. And Cat, like Cat's attacking closeouts well. He is trying to attack these mismatches, not even outright mismatches all the time. He's kind of viewing PJ Washington as a mismatch who he should be able to bully. PJ held up well on him, I thought, and I want to give him props. He was ready for the physicality of that matchup. But when Cat is getting position, he has to settle for these tough runners. He can't get all the way to the rim because of Lively, who blocked him twice, because of the presence of a Daniel Gafford. And I thought that that was massive in this game, just taking away that paint offense for Minnesota. And then I got to give props to the Dallas Bigs in general because they did their jobs again. There's a couple spots where they have turnovers that you don't love. And again, you just want to force them to be the decision makers more often, but they protected the rim. They did really well on the glass in this game, Logan. And that's another big thing. Like Dallas was every bit Minnesota's equal on the glass. And I thought that those two overall outperformed Cat and Gobert on the glass. They combined in their 48 minutes. I think they played a combined 48 minutes. I just view them as a collective when we're looking at their production. 19 points, 20 boards, man. That's what you're getting. And I say I view them as a collective. Lively has been better. Lively was better in this game. He was better in the last couple games of last series. And these guys mostly finished efficiently. And for Lively especially, that was a big issue early in the OKC series. So they both played good basketball games. And PJ Washington, dude, you're not always going to get the OKC magic. He's not always going to shoot 47% from deep, but he was still able to provide some infusion of offense when outside of Luka and Kyrie, like you weren't really getting that. It was a really rough shooting night. And particularly it was difficult when like they're running these pick and pop actions with him and Luka. And obviously Minnesota is going to hedge there with Luka, and PJ's just missing wide open threes from above the break. But he hits the big corner three in this game. And ultimately he was able to attack a closeout and beat Cat off the bounce, attack another closeout, get to a floater, draw a foul off of a Conley mismatch, just use his athleticism and his size to get some self-created offense or some offense putting the ball on the floor outside of Luka and Kyrie. That was important in this game. And if you're Dallas, I think you're extremely encouraged by this game. You fully expect Minnesota to bring even more intensity defensively. You expect them to make adjustments and probably to force the ball out of Luka and Kyrie's hands more. But even understanding that, like, you just got great shot quality in this game, and the drop was not a problem at all. So maybe they move off of that. But the ball pressure wasn't a problem at all. You consistently got into the paint and got good looks. It was just your three-point shooting. And you had a really bad shooting game from beyond the arc, and you still won. I expect Minnesota to play better, but I thought that this was a very successful offensive formula for Dallas in this game.
Very much so. And I mean, when you're looking at like just regular like basketball theory, like Carson, what's more likely that Minnesota shoots this hot from deep or that Dallas keeps dominating the interior? They outscore Minnesota. Dallas does 62-38 inside the paint. Like, let me be clear about something. I don't expect either of these like trends to continue. Like, I don't expect Dallas to have like this kind of dominance with Gobert down there. But again, what's more likely? Like, if Dallas can completely take away the paint in this series, that changes the complexion to me. Like, Luka is such a weapon offensively and how he, creates such easy looks on the inside. Like, that's something to keep monitoring, man. Like, if Dallas can convincingly take away the inside like this, I really do think that changes the series, man. Gafford and Lively have been, and PJ, man, shout out PJ. They have been so massive to this defense and this, mid-season turnaround. Something that's interesting about PJ, man, Carson, he's shooting 18% better on corner threes in these playoffs. He shot 24% in the regular season.
Yeah.
He's shooting 42% there in these playoffs, and he's shooting 38% on above the break threes. That's 3% higher than the regular season. He's just shooting better. Obviously, he's getting higher quality shots too, playing alongside Luka and Kyrie. But I'm telling you, schematically, that's what I'm attacking if I'm Minnesota, dude. Like, if I can consciously realize that PJ's above the break, I'm going to be more willing to gamble on Luka if he's on that side. You know what I mean? If it's a strong side help defender, I'm going to be more willing to help off if it's PJ above the break than in the corner. But
it's interesting. I just want to say something about Stan Van Gundy real quick because it cracks me up. On every broadcast, I noticed this first with Pascal Siakam when he said it on every Pacers game that he did. There are certain dudes where if they take an above the break three, he's just like, that's not their shot. Basically, like, that guy can only shoot it from the corners. And it's just funny with PJ because he was so bad from the corners in the regular season. And it's like he's been red hot there, obviously, but it's not really true to say that, like, that's always his spot and, like, oh, you don't want him taking above the break threes. But SVG loves it. He loves just focusing in on who can he say is only allowed to shoot from the corners. It's his favorite thing.
It's so funny, dude. Van Gundy's ready to give PJ like corner specialist on gold right now, man. No, it's hilarious, especially because of the regular season numbers. He was like, I want to say 12% better on above the break threes in the regular season than out of the corner. Like, it's pretty funny. So I think those things will balance out a little bit. But I really like Dallas's formula in this one, man. Like, great defense, star, Kyrie and Luka. I do think Ant's going to play better. I think Cat's going to shoot better. But the X factor in this series, man, just may be Dallas's dominance on taking away the paint, man, defensively. It's a huge component in this game. Carson, can you walk me through what's up with how they defended Kyle Anderson, man? Like, they were out there defending him like my little brother or something. I don't have a little brother, but if I did, I wouldn't want to dominate him. I want to give him a couple of buckets so he keeps playing with me instead of quitting, right? Well, you know what? If you dominate him, man, he's just going to stop playing with you. Like, why are they guarding him like somebody's little brother, man? What's up with that?
The theory is just the same as like what you see with the weakest shooter on the floor a ton of the time. Just ignore him so we can have an extra help defender.
Kyle Anderson stinks, man. If you apply a little defensive pressure, he's not going to make the shot. Like,
you hate Kyle Anderson, who, by the way, had an excellent isolation possession on Luka defensively. Listen, he's slow-mo, man. Yeah, if you get a contest up, he quite literally can't get the shot up. It takes him 4 to 5 seconds, really more like 4 to 5 business days. But you live with having the extra defender and help. But I think once you're letting him just like walk into these little push shots, that's too much because it's not just leaving him in the corner threes. It's like Kyle Anderson is actually a perfectly capable mid-range and like short-range touch shooter. He was above 50% for mid-range this year. It's a small sample size, but like he'll live with those shots. He likes those shots. That's where I think they took it too far.
I just don't understand not guarding someone. Like, oh, we're just gonna, we're gonna match up one-on-one with everybody else.
Did you watch what the Dallas Mavericks did to Josh Giddey last series?
Oh yeah, but that makes sense because Josh Giddey sucks. Like Kyle Anderson, like
you just said Kyle Anderson sucks
in a different way, man. Like I'm actually gonna let Josh Giddey shoot those all the time. That's what I'm saying. Like Giddey sucks on a different level, man. There are tiers to this. Kyle Anderson,
he's a better 3-point shooter than Kyle Anderson.
All right. I mean, I don't know. Kyle Anderson is like a skilled, like he's got some touch, man. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to play defense on that guy. I'm not just going to leave him on an island like they do.
He does.
I've heard that.
I can't believe you have me making any sort of Josh Giddey defense, man. Jeez. This was a really big win for Dallas, especially because they started so slow in their first 2 series and they came out pretty lackadaisical in their game ones. They just kind of got bludgeoned in both of them. And I thought that they came out with a really impressive level of focus and every bit what they needed from their 2 best players. I still think Minnesota matches up well here. I just think, again, they need to reach a higher level defensively. But more than anything, they need Ant to be the guy that he's been. They need Ant to be something close to the guy that he's been. And Cat, I think it is going to be more about how do we continue to spring him open for good looks from three, and how can he play make off of the defensive attention that he draws. I thought we got a little bit too much of him forcing the issue there, but this wasn't an outlier shooting night from Minnesota. Minnesota shot like pretty much average. They were 37% from deep. They created a lot of good open threes. And so they should be able to offset some of what they're losing in the paint there. They just have to be smart about it, and their best players have to play like their best players.
Yeah, I'm still going to take Minnesota in 7 as well, but that's the big key, man. Like if Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns just shrink in this, it's not really going to be a competitive series. Like I get such and that was a key dynamic that we highlighted coming into this series, Carson. Minnesota's half-court offense versus legitimately two of the greatest offensive players ever. Like we can have, you can't have Cat have an off night when Ant is playing this poorly. You can't have an Ant off night when Cat is playing this poorly, right? You can have a Luka off half when you got Kyrie. It's Minnesota doesn't have that luxury. They need these two guys to play much, much better. But I'm still confident they'll make some adjustments. I'm confident those guys will play better and things will balance out. And I still do believe in the offensive supporting cast of Minnesota more than I do in Dallas's.
Agreed. I believe in the supporting cast more for Minnesota, and that's kind of the difference right there. This is what we talked about before the series. The vast majority of the time, if you look at a playoff matchup and you say, okay, that team has more offensive punch, they clearly have two of the three best players on the floor, you're probably going to lean towards that team. But Minnesota does so many other things at such a high level. Their depth is so great. Their starting five is so complete. Their size is so overwhelming. Their defense is so dominant that I would still pick them. I did before this series, but they have to tap into a couple of those things at a higher level. And again, Ant's got to pull his weight more. Cat's got to pull his weight more. All right, Logan, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Naz Reid.
Very good Naz Reid game. Not what the Timberwolves wanted, but a very good Naz Reid game. One of their best players absolutely in this game. All right, guys. Appreciate you watching as always. If you enjoyed, there is plenty more NerdSesh content. We will be back with more of these nightly reactions throughout the conference finals. So stay tuned in for all of those. You can check out all of our full shows on our YouTube channel. You can also watch the video essays that we do diving deeper into some of these specific topics. You can follow us across social if you want our trivia content. That is on TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_sesh. You can join our Discord if you want for a chance to speak to the one and only Matthew Spawnhour and just to be part of the community with the fellas. You can check out our merch at thevolume.com if you want that hat that Logan is wearing right off of his nice shiny head right now. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.